Okay, what's going on, guys? Welcome to a brand new episode of Energized. Ross, introduce the guest, man.
Oh, from the sunny south, we have SBG Cork's head trainer, Mr. Liam Og Griffin. Liam, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I feel like I need to do some shadowboxing after that intro.
Well, you can do it. The people on Spotify won't be able to see it, so no need yet. Maybe at the end if they're lucky. But
I am the Bruce Buffer of the MMA podcast game.
Sweet.
That is undeniable. I think that's pretty undeniable.
Liam, how are you Ross 360? So,
Liam, how are you doing?
Stop.
How are you doing down in Cork? By the way, like obviously the last year has been just absolutely crazy, especially for Irish MMA. How are you keeping?
Yeah, we're tipping away. I mean, we're in the same boat as everybody else. The gym has been closed 11 out of the last 13 months now. But we keep in touch with all our members online. Obviously, we have the professional fighters have their own kind of bubbles and stuff like that, so we can keep them going. And but everybody else has been patient and doing their bit for this whole crisis. And yeah, we're hanging in there. It's been tough. It's still tough. But we are through it more or less, and we will be hitting the ground running once everything opens back up.
No, absolutely. Liam, one thing I really did want to get into with is obviously we had Philip Mulpeter on. He's doing great things with Gamma. And then we have Paddy Houlihan on. And he's doing great things. Paddy Houlihan.
I could not laugh there, man.
Paddy Houlihan on. And Jesus, that one got deep as well. Lovely fella. And now we have yourself. And we're trying to get all the main figureheads of Irish MMA on.
Yeah.
And you do great things down in Cork. But one thing that I think has been fed back to us is, I know there's IMAF, which you're heavily involved in, and then Gamma. Could you actually give us a brief description of each of them and what makes them different?
Sure. Well, let's start from the top. You have IMAF is the leading global body. It's not the only global body, but is the leading global body in terms of international MMA from an amateur point of view. And their remit and goal, it's looking very likely, is to get MMA to the Olympics by 2028, which would be phenomenal for the young athletes that are kind of starting out in their early teens now, and that would be a goal for them in 2028. A lot of the guys who are amateur now will be professional by then, so it doesn't really matter to them. But the workload that's involved in getting to that stage is it's mind-boggling. It's even hard to fathom the amount of red tape that they have to cut through on an international basis. They need to have more than 50 countries worldwide recognized by their own governments. They need to have like so many different I's dotted and T's crossed, and they're doing a phenomenal job. And that's just the political side. They also run the major tournaments, the world championships, the regional championships in each continent, and then they promote and help or are trying to push a national championships under all of those as well. And in the last 2 years, they've also introduced the youths, the rule set for the youths. So the kids from ages 12 to 17 now have a world championships. So IMAF is the worldwide body, and they then provide support and a kind of an overall map for individual countries to try and organize their stuff together. IMA is the body that is affiliated to IMAF, representing Irish MMA, and it's just amateur MMA right now. We have a lot of work to do. Obviously, it was a few years ago we had that tragic incident with João Carvalho that kind of put a spotlight on Irish MMA. We were almost banned at one point, and there was a lot of toing and froing, and the goal of getting Irish MMA unified and everybody's act together and running shows for amateurs safely and efficiently, that was already underway. But then the João Carvalho incident just put a fire under that, and now it's been accelerated. And so that's what I am as about, and we can talk a little bit more about that as well if you want. Gamma, just like a number of other smaller kind of novice shows, which is where they started, Gamma, and before that the Midlands Open, of course. We've been to a few of them ourselves. Phil does a great job at that. We have a similar one that we've been running down in Cork for the last 6 or 7 years, the Cork Open, the MMA Open. There was the Irish Open that Dino Wade ran in City West a few years ago. Declan Kennan and the Cage Legacy lads ran a couple of novice shows. So these are all kind of feeder shows that kind of are like novice level shows that give the guys something to start with, because amateur MMA is not a beginner sport. It's tough.
No.
It's rough. You know, somebody that has their first fight, and I know because I made my debut back in 2011 in Neptune Stadium on Cage Warriors 42, got the shit kicked out of me in front of all my friends and family who were all pissed. It was on, it's still on Fight Pass, you know. So, and that was my first fight. That was my debut into MMA. That's not how you start at any sport.
You can just hear everyone hitting pause and looking that fight up now.
Yeah, I know, it's embarrassing. I don't even watch it myself anymore. But but it's a hugely important step for competitors to be able to get their foot on the competition ladder. And yeah, there's a few shows like that. I probably left out a couple of them now, but yeah, that's the kind of the lay of the land with those three levels that you've asked me about anyway.
No, that's actually very descriptive, and I'm sure that really helps the listener at home to be like, right, so that's what all those letters mean. Because to a lot of people, they are just letters. They don't understand past that. Liam, one thing that we've sort of spoken with other guests is, what do you think is one of the key factors to help grow Irish MMA and, you know, take it from the grassroots and, you know, to create these future superstars? And I don't just mean in coaching, but like to sort of have a strategy and sort of tier levels to, you know, move people on. It's almost, you're almost looking for a belt system, except in MMA, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's already there, and that's something that we were supposed to be rolling out the end of last year, but obviously various different lockdowns have restricted that. So yeah, like the future is to create a developmental path, and this is not just for MMA. There's no point in us reinventing the wheel here. Many different sports have done this, where they've become mainstream and they've become huge sports. You look at soccer, GAA, rugby, any of the field sports. Look at any of the other martial arts that have hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people worldwide involved in the sport. In Ireland, we are, like in the MMA community, we have a lot of MMA fans, but maybe not so many people that are actually actively involved in the sport, because it started out as a professional fight sport. And what we've got to do is so that's the top tier. If you think of a pyramid, that's like the apex of the pyramid is the pros. You've the likes of McGregor and all of these guys getting millions for prize fighting. But in order to create an infrastructure that fuels that economy, you have to build the lower stacks in that. And that means you have to have your amateur very, very strong. You have to have your novices very, very strong. You have to have your hobbyists involved, the people who actually go ahead and buy the tickets for pay-per-views. You have to have your fan base, your coaches, your officials, everybody across the board. And at a certain point, you need parents involved. You need kids learning how to do MMA safely and in controlled environments that their parents can trust in. And then everybody contributes to this massive economy. That's how you develop anything, any business, any sport. That's how you do it. How do we do that? We do it with a clear, defined developmental path. And that's what IMAF is producing on a worldwide space. And then they're filtering it down to a national space. The gradings that you mentioned, IMAF already have that rolled out. It's in the process of being implemented in countries all over the world. France have already adopted it mainstream. So we were, as I said, Andy Ryan and Danny Core and John Kavanagh were going to be doing the first lot of gradings the end of last year, and it was going to be kind of something that was rolled out over the next couple of years. And where that comes into it is, let's say you have a show coming up. Now you can match people according to levels. It's not just about like, oh, he hasn't fought yet, so therefore we'll put him up against another debut guy. But these guys might come from a boxing background. They might come from a kickboxing background. They might have 100 sample fights in a different country, which happens. But because they're 0-0 in MMA, they end up matching each other. It could be a grossly mismatched fight. But if you had two guys who are green belts or whatever it doesn't matter what you call it.
Yeah.
It could be an indigo belt. It could be a purple patch. It could be a blue chevron. Whatever you want to call it. Just make some sort of a level where we can say, right, these guys are the same weight and they're roughly the same ability level. That should be a good match. That will be a safe contest for those two people to take part in. And then now you can go from the youngest kids right up to the adults. Once they become elite level amateurs, they should be in and around the darker colors like purples and browns. And when they become pros, or when they have a vast 10, 15 years of experience behind them, maybe then they become a black belt, and maybe people would want to become a black belt in MMA as they would love to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. How prestigious is a black belt in jiu-jitsu?
Oh yeah,
Huge,
well,
yeah.
it's very prestigious, and well,
Yeah.
also depend on who you're getting it under as well. I mean,
Absolutely,
like,
100%.
there's tiers to that, and then you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Then you start getting your black belt with your your red little notch on it, and so on and so forth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or I suppose if you go the Gracie tier, you're almost like 10th degree belt, black belt, 11th degree, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and there was a bit of pushback early on about the belt system. I mean, people saying, "Oh, there's no belts in MMA. Why are you just creating it?" There was no belts in jiu-jitsu as well at one point in time. You know, but you take any black belt in jiu-jitsu and say, right, your belt is not worth anything, I'll take that off you there, thanks very much. They will break your arms. You know, that belt is worth something to them. And we're in a position at the moment where we're starting out this system, and we have the option. We can either create a system that doesn't really mean anything and nobody really cares about, or we can make it prestigious as the jiu-jitsu black belt belt system is, and people would want to be a black belt in MMA at some point in time. And that might take us 10 years. And it's worth achieving.
I do suppose, like, if I asked my mom, or I asked, you know, a random person on the street and said, and I went up and went, I'm a martial artist, they probably picture me being like, that fella probably wears one of those fancy dressing gowns with a belt on, you know what I mean? And they'd be like, they probably go, are you black belt? And then, you know, or a white belt. And that's probably the only two belts they know, if that makes sense. So, like, I think a belt system works out well. It translates to, you know, someone going to their first ever show, you know what I mean? They can put it on, and the way you can actually structure the card, you can always put the black belts on in the main event, and then bring it down
tournament.
Yeah, and bring it down the card. It makes sense. It's an easy follow. You know, if you're providing programs or something on the day, it makes it very easy for, you know, Joe Soap, who's coming in off the street, to go, you know what, that makes sense.
And don't forget, you have people who, like, the vast majority of people who practice MMA, certainly in SBG Cork, only 10% of our membership have any indication or any inclination to ever compete, whether it be jiu-jitsu or MMA. The vast majority of people are in it as a hobby. They just want to learn self-defense. They want to get fitter. They want to get in shape. They want to know more about the sport that they're a fan of. So give them something to aim for. Let them have a criteria over which a number of years they can develop into an accomplished martial artist that has a belt, a stripe, a tattoo, something that indicates that's a kind of a return on their investment of time and knowledge and effort. Every other martial art has it, apart from, I know Muay Thai doesn't do it. Boxing has their boxing record, but they do have a developmental structure of going through the various county championships, national championships. You've got the Olympics, you've got this, that, and the other. There's always a developmental pathway, and that's what we need to be doing, and that's what is happening. IMAF is leading the way on this, and IMAF is trying to implement it as we go along. A lot of work involved in it, by the way.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot. Yeah, it sounds like a lot.
No, what's called and fair play to you for being one of the people leading the charge. I just like to see that, you know, MMA in Ireland, it seems to be in good hands. It seems to have, you know, just from the people you listed off, like some of the top people, like trying to, you know, create some sort of almost formality to it, that like everyone's under the same sort of structure. And I think that's what it needs more than anything. You know, we were talking to Paddy Hoolan, and we were saying, you know, would funding from the government help? And he was like, here, look, you can always sort of raise money. Yeah, funding from the government would be nice, but the chances of getting it are quite slim. And he was saying that, look, you can always sort of raise money, but he was even saying when people do go off the IMAFs, you know what I mean, that could almost be done slightly better in a way. I think I was talking about that, you know what I mean, everyone almost goes as an individual, if that makes sense. You know, they cover their own costs, as opposed to maybe if you almost rang Aer Lingus and were like, hey, look, we have a plane full of people coming off, can you do us a discount? And then you ring the hotel and go, look, we all want to book 40 rooms, you do a discount, that sort of thing. Maybe you could do better, because we were sort of saying that we might not necessarily be sending the best people. We're almost sending the best people who can afford to go, which isn't exactly what you want to represent your country, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I heard that discussion on both Phil's and Paddy's, and I was screaming at the TV because I have a bit of a bone to pick about that. right? So first off,
Okay.
you
The
come from
gloves are on.
you come from any martial arts that's not boxing, and you get to a high level, international level, kickboxing, karate. That's my own background. Taekwondo, judo. Doesn't matter what it is. You get on the Irish team. You're paying your own way. There is no funding for that. It doesn't happen in any other sport. It doesn't even happen in jiu-jitsu now. Jiu-jitsu is like, how much does it cost to go into an IBGF tournament? Any idea? Somewhere between 100 and 150 quid.
Oh, I was
right?
going to say 200 quid, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, and some of them are. Some of them are. No, the medals are lovely, but that's a one-day tournament. You don't get any food and accommodation. You don't get any equipment, right? So people are and nobody complains about this. That doesn't include your flights, your accommodation. You're probably going to Madrid for a weekend. So that would cost you 600-700 quid just to compete. And then you might lose your first fight and you're out the gap, and that's it. That's the way it is, right?
Yeah.
Just because we have this a cost associated with MMA competition at an international level, it's exactly the same as every other martial art. And none of the other martial arts are getting funding for that particular purpose, apart from boxing and athletics and any of the well established Olympic sports that have come back from Olympics with gold medals. Then the money increases, and then eventually you get there, right?
Yeah.
Now, having said that, an IMAF tournament is approximately €1,500. That, like, on average, right? I've been to 9 of them. I've paid my way for every time I've gone, and I've got a bunch of athletes that have done multiple IMAF tournaments. Ryan Spillane has done 8 tournaments, and every single time it averages it out about €1,500. What are you getting for that? You're getting 5 days of events. You're getting your accommodation, your food, and the equipment that you fight in. Now, the coaches have to pay as well, but let's remind yourself of how much does a hotel cost for a week? How much is your food cost for a week? 600-700 quid. It's not bad. All right. Now I know it, like, I would much prefer as a coach not to have to pay, but I don't expect anybody to be paying my hotel expenses either for me. Do you know? If I went to corner some of my jiu-jitsu athletes, I would have to pay for my own flights and accommodation also. So it is what it is. It is expensive. There is not going to be any funding, even if we do become recognized as a government by the government. There's probably not going to be funding for that in the next decade at least. And the cost is there, but also this is about how bad do you want it? Do you want to be a world champion? Do you want to be a UFC champion? Is it that important enough to you that you make sacrifices everywhere else in your life? You get an extra part-time job, you beg, borrow, and steal, you look for sponsorship. As a club, you get behind your athletes and you do fundraiser and you get them there. Do you want to be a world champion or not? That's the biggest question. So I understand where you're coming from with regards to the cost of it, but I don't believe that there's anybody who hasn't. I don't believe there's anybody left off a team because of the cost of going. Everybody has the opportunity to go and get this done. We would offer help to anybody to help them to write begging letters for sponsorship. I've done it. I've given everybody that's been on the last few Irish teams, I've given them the letters that we use down in SPG Cork for plaguing local businesses and try and get 50 quid here, 50 quid there. It all adds up. So the help is there. It's a cost, but how bad do you want it?
This is
Ross,
Lemo's Dana White. Do you want to be a fighter?
Do you want to be a fucking fighter? That's exactly what it is. Do you want to be a world champion? Can you do without a sun holiday and a drinking holiday in Magaluf for the chance to become a world champion in IMAF? That's my question.
Yeah. I was actually, I know this is a bit of a to the left, but I was listening to Ben Askren on he was talking to Dave Portnoy, and he was saying when he was younger, like, his parents wanted to bring him away on holidays, and he was just told them they should go because he wants to become a world champion in wrestling. And that's just the way it is, Ross, isn't it? Like, I mean, some people are getting into the game maybe for the glitz and the glamour, but other people are into it because they love it. But like, Liam, how often has that happened where you picked someone and then they just weren't able to go because they couldn't afford it? Like, it seems to be happening next to no times.
Almost never. I mean, we have had a few times where people have been selected, and we say weeks before the payments were due and stuff like that, they'd message and say, look, I can't get the money together, or I can't get the time off work. Almost as equal to not being able to afford it is the time off work, right? Yeah. And then you say, okay, we'll offer the place to somebody else, but you had the first refusal, and that's it. You know, I'm not saying that like everybody should have 1,500 quid just sitting under their mattress waiting for a championships, but you know, it's very, very rare that it has been the case that somebody didn't go because they couldn't afford to go. There's many athletes that have been very generously sponsored by local businesses within their own organization, and there's many athletes where the club that they've come from have rallied around them to promote or to chip in to get that athlete to the championships.
Yeah,
This
I think
happens in every sport. This is not just MMA. I've got two athletes here. They were supposed to make their MMA debut. Chris and Sean McCarthy, karate twins as we call them, and they are actually going to a qualifier next month, and they're hoping to be at the Olympics in Tokyo in the summer. They're that level in karate, right? And they're part of the association which has the path to the Olympics. Now in 2019, they did all of the qualifying tournaments, and because they were 17 at the time or something like that, they had to travel with a guardian at all times. In the accumulation of all of the tournaments that they traveled in 2019, the family ended up paying €25,000 to make sure that those kids got to every single qualifier throughout that year. Now, that was done in a series of fundraising. The parents obviously chipped in. The two boys got part-time jobs. These lads want to be on the Olympics that bad that they would crawl over broken glass to get there. And it's part of it. It's not just MMA, it's every sport. We have these types of stories in boxing, we have it in GAA, we have it everywhere. There's a certain level of desire that's required if you want to be a world champion, and that comes with like there's nobody here that's been to the world championships that's a millionaire. I could tell you there's like I've had to beg, borrow, and steal to get there myself. I'm certainly not floating on a load of money, but it's that important enough for me for it to raise future IMAF champions and get them to the likes of Bellator and UFC, that I will crawl over broken glass to get there.
Yeah, I think me and Ross were just sort of like, we were worried that some people in the Irish MMA scene that could be future champions, they're just missing out just purely financially, and I think that's one of the main reasons why we were getting yourself.
Yeah, no, I understand.
On, you know, yeah,
no, I understand that, and there is a cost. I'm not diminishing the cost of it at all. I'm just saying that it's. I don't remember an athlete that was left behind because they couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
No,
that's just what we were worried about, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. I do think if the sport does get an Olympic recognition, it could be massive for sport in general and from a financial point of view, because then the government will almost be forced, their hand will be forced that they will have to give some form of sponsorship. And, you know, even if it was €100 off or €200 off an athlete, it will go a long, long way. I know there are companies out there like Indeed who do sponsor Olympic athletes and athletes that haven't gone to the Olympics yet, Olympic hopefuls and stuff like that. So, like, I'm sort of looking, you know, I'm waiting for some company that has a foothold in MMA to, you know, get what's called sponsor the IMAF team to go off the IMAFs and you know, and like you say, Liam, they don't have to, you know, take the millions out to send every Tom, Dick, and Harry over. You know what I mean? A small bit can go a long way. I mean,
you're trying to get invited there yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying to get invited myself.
He's like, how can I be the Bruce Buffer?
I can be the water boy.
No, absolutely. No, it is an issue. You know, it does cost money, and I know that I just the bone I had to pick was that, like, I think it was framed that there was a kind of an elitism of kind of all the rich guys are going and all the poor guys are left behind. That's just not what's happening. And
that's good here.
In terms of the selection process, also, there is no favoritism or anything like that going on. There is a squad. Andy Ryan is the head coach of the Irish national team.
Good luck.
We run squad sessions outside of pandemic times, of course, and there is an Irish team. That's it. There is no SBG, there is no Team Rider, there is no CMAC, there is no MMA Cork, there's no teams. There's a Team Ireland. You turn up at the squads, you register your interest to be part of Team Ireland that's going on whatever campaign that's going. Every member club of IMA receives notification of this via email and through the social media channels. And those who turn up, you put the time in, you do your training on the session, and you apply. There's 2 places in every weight class. Over the last few years, it's been very, very rare where we've had to have fight offs for the individual places. So most times we say specifically in the heavier weight classes or in the lightweight classes, we have less athletes than we have places for. So those selections are automatic. Fine, great, brilliant. Nothing to worry about there. Where you have selection is usually in the male featherweight, between featherweight and welterweight, or between featherweight and middleweight, perhaps. Yeah. There may be 3 athletes and there's only 2 spots. And then in that case, we would, at the next available show, maybe it's a Cage Legacy, maybe it's a Cage Warriors Academy, maybe it's another show, we would make sure that those 2 fighters were matched on that card, and whoever won got the space. That has happened.
Would that be announced? Would people know beforehand?
Yep. It's been done on Battlezone twice. It was done on Cage Legacy a number of times. I believe there was a fight off between Jack Monaghan and Lee Hammond at one stage for the remaining lightweight space. That was the year that that I think that was for Europeans. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to be doing Jack Monaghan dirty here now, but I think Lee Hammond won the fight.
But well, I do remember seeing Lee go off.
Yeah.
What's called? I think he went off to one of those Europeans or World Championships.
Was that this time last year at FightCon? Remember, Kiefer was keeping an eye on Lee Hammond over in gold somewhere, and they're all celebrating there.
No, well, Lee Hammond was the 2018 World Champion, same year as Ryan Spillane. I think it was the year before that. I think it was 2017 where Lee was selected, but he actually injured his thumb weeks beforehand, and then Jack Monaghan was offered a spot, and Jack went. And he fought on that. It was the European Championships in 2018 in Romania.
And how did Jack do?
Jack, I believe he went out in the quarterfinals of that particular tournament. That was a tough year. That was a really tough year.
I suppose at lightweight, you're always going to come up against some of the top talents because it's a lot of people's natural weight class. It's one, when you meet a common fella off the street who does train, they're going to be in and around that build. So it
is a very common weight. Yeah, you'll see it in the tournament listings. There's 32 in every division, in every weight class, and it's a 5-day tournament. So the 32 fight down to 16, down to 8, down to 4, and then there's the finals on Saturday.
And it's a random draw, isn't it?
It's seeded. So if you have, if you'd have like the number 1, 2, 3, and 4 are ranked based on previous IMAF tournaments. We say the gold medalists and the silver medalists from last year's championships would be on opposite sides of the draw. So the only way they could meet is back in the final again. So there's things like that. But apart from the top 4 rankings, it is random. It's literally computer generated. It's done on big screen in front of all of the athletes the night before the first fight. And it's extremely transparent. But you could, it happened with Ryan Spillane in 2019 World Championships. Now he was the defending world champion, and he went out. He went and fought a guy from Russia in it was the quarterfinals. So there was only it was the quarterfinals. The dude that he fought was a 2-time Sambo world champion with over 300 fights in Sambo, but it was only a second MMA fight. So you're going into a tournament, and there's no footage on these Russian guys because their names are kind of spelt in different alphabets. So there's the Cyrillic alphabet and the whatever R one is. I don't know what that one's called. The Latin alphabet.
The common alphabet.
that one, yeah. But you can type their name in as it is on the IMAF roster, and you find nothing on YouTube, nothing on Facebook, nothing on Instagram. You would have to know how to translate it into the Cyrillic alphabet, and then when you go do that, there's 100 of them. So which one is it? It's so difficult, So, but yeah, anybody that's going through that IMAF, man, like the likes of Lee Hammond. Lee Hammond won 5 fights in 5 days to become the 2018 world champion, and then the following year went in and went out in the quarterfinals in his first fight. It's crazy. Like the levels are just absolutely insane.
Well, I suppose, like, as you know, every fighter has good days and bad days as well. You know what I mean? And like, you know what I mean? You need to be on at all times, and you need to be switched on. And if you're not, you know what I mean, you could have taken a long flight for, a short time in the cage. Yep. But Liam, I must say thanks so much for clearing like loads that up. Really insightful. Part of the reason we got you here because we knew how involved with IMA you were, and we're like, right, well, like, I actually said to Barry, I was like, I actually want Liam to break down all the organizations and then like tell us how it works. And like, you've actually done a perfect job of that.
Can I make a recommendation for you in terms of the political side of IMA and what IMA is currently trying to do? There's a lot of breakthroughs coming through in the next 12 months. Can I recommend that you get on Tim Murphy, the current chairman for IMA, who knows the entire ins and outs of where we are with Sport Ireland, where we are with the national governing body status, and what's stopping us from getting status, what are the roadblocks, and what we're doing to get around it. There's some phenomenal work going on in the background there that it's difficult to put it out there, because you don't want to put some civil servants nose out of joint before you have a meeting in 2 weeks' time or something like that. But Tim does a great job in breaking it down, and he would give you the blow by blow, the analysis of where we're going and what has been done in the last like 5 years. There's been a lot of people working tirelessly with no like giving their own free time to put hours into these endless books of notes and pages and back and forth emails, and it's slow progress, but it's steady progress, and there's going to be a lot of breakthroughs this year, and I think Tim would give you a phenomenal breakdown of what's coming down the tracks.
I think you wrote that down, Basmo, did you?
I did. I actually wrote like Ross Lloyd, the Liam Oak there, but I'm only messing. But like how much has stuff progressed over the last year? Obviously, a lot of people are stuck at home. Like, like how much has COVID like either like hurry things up or slow things down?
I think it's going to be interesting to see everybody come back out of the blocks, because one of the things that's common knowledge with regards to training for fights is that you don't really make developmental leaps when you're training for a fight. You're in fight camp, you're basically fighting the scales, and you're getting ready with your cardio, and you're just fine tuning what you've already got. When you have a break, then you have time to go and learn new technique. You get to develop your skills. You get to improve on aspects of the game that you don't normally have time to work on. And we've had an entire country of dedicated athletes just spend 12 months developing. What the hell is going to come out of that? I'm very, very excited to see the strides that people have made. And I can see it from my lads in the gym, the pros. Like Pally Han is a different animal to this time last year. Hulk is...
Shout out, Pa.
Yeah, and like Ryan Spillane, he Ryan Spillane's a different shape than he was this time last year. Do you know, these guys
in a good way or a bad way?
I don't want to give him a big head, right? Because he already loves himself that much. But
we know.
So he's been described as going from hold on, let me get this right now. Is it the Luke Ferrigno Hulk? Is that the older guy?
Yeah.
That's
and now he's the Mark Gruffalo Hulk.
So he's the Marvel Comics Hulk. So he's the what's called CGI Hulk now.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, and they're just the athletes that I can see with my own eyes. But I know that there's lads putting in the time wherever they can. They're in small bubbles somewhere, or they're training in their back garden. They're watching instructional DVDs and grappling a grappling dummy at home and learning how to leg lock or something. But what we will see coming out the blocks here in the summertime, hopefully Cage Legacy will be back. I know Clan Wars are on in at the end of May as well. Hopefully those shows go ahead. You're going to see some phenomenal performances and phenomenal changes in the athletes. And I think you're going to have a much better appreciation from the athletes themselves as to what they were missing. It might have been taken for granted all along. I'll just fight whenever I want. These guys are like, I couldn't fight for last year. I've got one fella that keeps texting me every day. He's like, can I fight tomorrow? Can I fight tomorrow? I'm like, there's no freaking shows on. Leave me alone. But he never did that last year. But this year, because he can't have it, now he wants it. And maybe we'll see a big boost in people's desire to fight this year. And I think the fans will win from that.
Yeah, Ross, well, that's definitely a big thing. Because go on, Barry.
No, I was just going to say, Ross, that's actually pretty good to hear. I actually thought Liam might be saying something not negative, but it was just, it goes to show that people are still grinding in the background. As Liam was saying earlier, it was champions are going to still want to be champions. So there has been progression where we thought this might be actually a really negative thing, but it's actually turned out to be a pretty good thing. Maybe it's just in Cork, but I'm sure it's not just in Cork.
No, it's nationwide. There have been some setbacks. I like just from the IMA point of view, I know that there are clubs that had closed their doors with the sentiment that they probably wouldn't open again. It was at least 4 or 5 clubs that we received that unfortunate email from, and we wish them the best. And if there's anything that IMA can do, certainly to support, just reach out or whatever. But for the most part, everybody's just been taken away, keeping their online classes going. Aisling that works here as the administrator for IMA, it has been kind of keeping in touch with all the various clubs and kind of helping them to share information. There's been some clubs that they were doing much better with Zoom classes, and they kind of shared how they were doing it. and then Aisling would pass that on to other clubs and maybe help them to do it as well. So yeah, it hasn't been all rosy in the garden, but you know, we are the Fighting Irish for a reason, and we've gotten through it this far, and we're going to come out the other side fighting as well.
Amen,
Absolutely.
baby.
Amen. And we're going to move on to UFC 261 in 2 seconds. But before we do, Pa and Ryan have fights coming up. Do you want to tell us about them for a quick 2 minutes?
Sure. So Pa is going to be fighting at the end of May in Luxembourg. It's on a new promotion called Soko FC, and he's fighting a kid from France whose nickname is Tarzan. Don't know anything else about him. That's about it. So Pa is, as I said, he's in phenomenal shape. He's actually fighting in his own weight class at this time for a change. So he'll be fighting at featherweight. Normally he'll fight anywhere from featherweight to welterweight. He doesn't care. He's just one of them, you know. But this is his weight class. This is where when we do get a kind of a more mainstream contract for him, this is where I want him. I want him at featherweight. This is where his natural size is his advantage. So he's fighting May 28th there in Luxembourg. And then on July 25th, both of them are on the Battle Arena card in Birmingham. So Hulk was the European amateur heavyweight champion for Battle Arena like 4 years ago, I think.
I think every time Ryan fought, he got a new championship, didn't he?
Yeah, but he won that one with a 7-second head kick KO.
Oh, well, I'm sure they're only dying to have him back south.
They actually, yeah, no, they there was a kind of a message went out on one of the forums saying they were looking for a heavyweight, and by the time I messaged James Price, the CEO of Battle Arena, they had already matched that fight, so that fight was gone. And then he was like, he sent me the sad face emoji. Oh, sorry, we've already matched that fight. I put down the phone and it rang again straight away. What if we have this guy fight him instead? We really want him. So yeah, he's going over, and yeah, it's going to be a good one. So he's fighting a guy called Romek Sim. Romek Sim is 3-1 as an amateur and 2-0 as a pro. He's from Eastern Europe. Don't ask me where. But like Hulk will just flatten him.
Yeah, because he signed to Bellator as well, didn't he? And then that just...
No, it's still signed to Bellator. So he's officially a Bellator fighter, but he has a 1-fight release because Bellator are not going to be running a European show possibly until the end of this year. Hopefully the end of this year. We're hoping that they will be back in October, but we just don't know. So in the meantime, they've given Ryan a 1-fight release, get him going, and we'll be back for that then shortly after.
Ross, we're gonna have to invite the lads on before their fights as well.
Absolutely. Just one quick one. Will there be any issues with hotel quarantine stuff coming back into the country after going over those shows? Yeah, so we're trying to figure that out at the moment. In fact, we've been just working all morning for Dean Barry from SBG Charlestown. He's flying out to Titan, out to Dominican Republic. Yeah, correct. Yeah, and so he'd be the first Irish athlete, and I think is Liam McCourt is fighting in the US as well shortly afterwards, or maybe the same weekend. Yeah, so those two from Charlestown are the first to test the waters on this. So officially, professional athletes and elite sports athletes that are going to COVID-controlled environments to compete as part of their sports are exempt from that hotel quarantine. But that's athletes who are recognized by Sport Ireland. IMA and MMA is not recognized by Sport Ireland, so we have a bit of work to do there. IMA have already issued or are currently issuing letters to those athletes to say that, like, obviously IMA consider them to be elite athletes and professional athletes, but I just don't know how much weight that holds with regards to whoever the authority is when they fly back in. So we're trying to clear that up with Sport Ireland at the moment. It's just one of the jobs that we're kind of trying to work on in the background here. Yeah, hopefully all works out, because like I'm sure you'd hate for any of those guys to take fights, especially your guys in the pro debut, and then end up coming back and own money after No, I'm sure they will be okay, but it's just we have a bit of work to do there, and that's just one of those jobs in the background that IMA is helping to do. If we like, who's going to do it otherwise? It needs a national governing body to sort out these little issues. And I was going to say this all fair, but like, who knows? You could look at flying out of Belfast and see what happens from there. Still won't work. No, okay. We tried that already. Okay, fair enough. I'm always one for chance my arm. I chance my arm everywhere I go.
Yeah, we tried that already. And the weird thing as well is if you get caught for hotel quarantine, let's say you fly back into Cork, well, then they'll put you on a bus and make you do your hotel quarantine in Dublin. So you fly into Cork, you get on a bus all the way up the motorway to Dublin, and then you start your hotel quarantine. So it's a mess of a system for anybody to be looking forward to. So hopefully we get that sorted. We're working hard on it, and hopefully it won't be an issue.
Cool.
Hopefully.
Basmo, UFC 261. Hit us with it. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, okay. Before we let Limo get back to trying to keep people out of quarantine, we'll just look over the action that happened over the weekend. Obviously, Kamaru Usman defeated Jorge Masvidal in the second round. Liam, the question is like, where do you think Kamaru Usman goes from here after beating Jorge Masvidal?
Well, I think they said Colby is next. I don't like that, but that's what I believe Dana says, and I believe Colby also said that he's contemplating retiring as well at this stage. So it's kind of up in the air. I'm not on board with this ghost talk for Kamaru Usman. I know he's got 14 wins in a row, I think is his record at the moment, but only 3 of those have been title shots or title fights, or 4 of them or something like that. So I don't believe he kind of ranks up there with GSP and John Jones and a few others, Amanda Nunes in particular as well. But where does he go from here? I'll tell you what I'd like to see. I'd like to see him fight Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, because Wonderboy is one of the welterweights up there that presents a style that's a problem for Kamaru Usman. I think he steamrolls Colby again. He's already steamrolled Jorge Masvidal. I think he'll do the same to Leon Roberts. I think he'll do the same to Michael Chiesa. I think they need to give him, just for the sake of the division and for the sake of the sport, there's no point in us seeing him steamroll the same guy with a different face over and over and over again. Give him a challenge, and let's raise another contender. Hamzat Chimaev is coming up there. Jeez. Mr. Paul O'D, who's my co-presenter on the Guts and Glory podcast, will be swooning when I mention Hamzat Chimaev, but he's another problem coming up through there. But that's what I want to see anyway. I want to see Wonderboy versus Usman.
All right, Ross, what creates green panty night for Kamaru Usman?
Well, as Limo said there, it looks like it is going to be Colby Covington. I mean, you'll get a lot of really corny shit talk between those two going back and forth. One thing I will say about Kamaru Usman is I think he's changed the narrative on his career over his last couple of fights. He was Marty Fake Newsman or Marty Snoozman, and I don't think you can watch any of 3 of Kamaru Usman's last 3 fights and say they were boring in any fashion whatsoever. I must say, hats off to Trevor Whitman. For me, he's MMA Coach of the Year this year. He's done an absolute phenomenal job with Kamaru Usman since he's got a hands on, and also he had Rose Namajunas in the co-main event. But look, Kamaru Usman, he looks like an absolute killer. He looks more dangerous now than he ever has. He is a very, very tough puzzle to solve. Not many people can go undefeated in their UFC tenure. He is undefeated at the moment in his UFC tenure. He might finish undefeated depending on what sort of moves he does make. But who would I like to see him fight next? I'm a big fan of Leon Edwards does get the win. I would like to see that fight. Do I think Leon Edwards is going to beat him? Probably not at this stage, from judging what I just saw from Kamaru Usman there. But I do think Leon Edwards is very, very well-rounded. His defensive wrestling is very, very good, and his striking is very good. So I think it could be an interesting matchup. And he's a tough man to get out of there, Leon Edwards. So I'd like to see that, but whether it happens or not, it doesn't make green panty night, Basmo. But who do you want?
I think the Colby Covington fight is just, it was such a great fight last time that I would like to see it again. And do you know what? Colby's selling it for him, Usman as well. I don't think Usman can really sell anything, but Colby's generating a bit of hype, and he makes you think. Even though we all saw the fight, he sort of says stuff and he's trying to trick you into not happening. You know what I mean? Usman finished him, but he lets on he didn't. It's, you know what I mean? For people who didn't see the fight, that's something they have to be looking forward to.
I wasn't a fan of that fight, I'll be honest. I don't see why people are ranting and raving about that being a great fight. I thought it was 2 mediocre kickboxers just basically doing mediocre kickboxing when they could have very, very easily put on a wrestling masterclass. It was just a kickboxing fight between 2 guys who couldn't kickbox. Now, I know Kamaru has shown improvement, certainly this fight. But back then it was just single punch combinations. That was it.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it was the drama. I know.
It was the drama.
You know, sex sells. It was the drama behind the whole thing. The back and forth between the two of them, and it was a good finish. I'll give them that much.
Yeah. I'll go into the next fight then, lads. Obviously, Rose Namajunas came away with the win against Weili Zhang. Ross, you thought Rose was going to get the win. I didn't actually think she was going to win.
I didn't either.
You didn't either?
No.
Ross, you were right. What made you think she was going to win?
I think we've lost audio there, Ross.
No, Ross, unmute.
Oh my God, sorry about that, lads.
Go ahead.
Technical difficulties. There's just something about Rose Namajunas when someone comes at her with aggression, which I believe Weili Zhang was. I think she's actually the best striker in the strawweight division. I think she's better than Joanna. You know, I mean, her boxing is so crisp, and like the way she threw that head kick, it was off the lead front leg as well, and it was almost out of the blue. It was so nonchalantly thrown, and it landed straight on the money, and she went in there for the kill. And one thing I will say about Rose Namajunas, very impressive. She only has 10 wins in her MMA career, and she's claimed the strawweight title in the UFC twice. No female has ever lost a belt and reclaimed it in the UFC. Very few fighters in general have been able to do it. I think Stipe Miocic is probably the most famous to ever do it, and now Rose. I just think if she is mentally there and ready to fight, she is a tough problem in that division to fight.
Liam, who do you think Rose should take on next? Or do you think there should be a rematch?
It's the winner. I think it's the winner between Carla Esparza and is it Wan Shan'an?
Yeah, the other Chinese fighter.
The other Chinese girl, yeah. That's what I say. Paula D pronounces all the Chinese names brilliantly, and I just refer to him normally. So, but I think that's what's next. We had a kind of a segment on our podcast there last week where we were describing the revolving door that's been the strawweight division. You've had like Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Weili Zhang, Rose Namajunas, and who's the fourth one?
Andrade.
Yes, between those four, that's been your title picture for the last couple of years. So we need some fresh faces in there. There's a couple of younger athletes in the 125 division, which I think that could possibly drop down. I'm thinking of Miranda Maverick, and there's a couple of like early 20-year-olds that are coming up to the ranks, and we need to see a couple of those kind of be developed a little longer. But 2 years time, then we'll have some fresh blood up there around about the top. But for now, Carla Esparza and Wang Shan'an, the winner of that one.
Also, that'd be an interesting rematch if Carla Esparza could win to rematch against Rose Namajunas, which was the inaugural strawweight title fight. Also, Mackenzie Dern's making a bit of a charge at the moment, and she's got a bit of a star power behind her, so who knows?
Yeah, she looked awesome in her last fight as well.
And then, lads, in the third title fight, Valentina Shevchenko defeated Jessica Andrade. I think everyone picked this one. But, like, where does Valentina go from here? She's just so dominant. And, like, where does she go from here? Ross, where do you think Valentina should go from here?
I think Valentina Shevchenko is the Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson of flyweights. I don't think there's a flyweight on the planet that can touch her. She took Dresha Andrade down at will. Yeah. She got into that side mount and crucifix position. She just absolutely hammered her. She's a stone cold killer. The way she says that is she was like, I don't really have a game plan. I get in there and my body takes over and it just does whatever it does. You know what I mean?
Very true though.
She's a very scary proposition. I know people are clamoring for the Amanda Nunes trilogy. Look, if it's made, I'll absolutely be delighted. I'll watch it. I think she's going to fight Lauren Murphy next. Lauren's quite a good wrestler. I think it'll be interesting to see her fight that. But, like, let's be honest, I think Shevchenko will probably get her out there just as fast as she did Andrade. What's your take on it there, Liam?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's nobody in the flyweight division for Valentina at this stage. Lauren Murphy is just going to get absolutely steamrolled. I think I'm a Lauren Murphy fan in the same way as I'm a Roxanne Modafferi fan. Like Roxanne and Lauren have, against all odds, stayed up there in the top of the division for so long, without the benefit of like naturally phenomenal genetics like the likes of Valentina Shevchenko. But having said that, they're not even getting into the same realm as Valentina. I think the Amanda Nunes fight is the one to make, because I think it's the only place that the two of them are going to get a challenge now is against each other. I think they're kind of in a similar position.
Do you think they should put that Valentina Lauren Murphy fight on the Amanda Nunes Juliana Pena card? How therefore they're perfectly lined up, and then they can finally do that trilogy. For whatever reason, Dana White doesn't seem that keen on the trilogy, but I think all the fans are very keen on the trilogy. Why not?
I think he'll come around to it. He's been wrong before.
Yeah.
Didn't they say that women were never going to be in the UFC?
He did indeed. In fairness, he does admit when he's wrong, and you have to give him credit on that.
Well, I hope he's wrong about this Jake Paul thing.
Stop.
You said not to bring that up. But
we've tried to avoid it all week, but that's what the fans want.
The fans tend to get what they want, especially if money talks. But this is one thing we have to talk about, lads. Chris Weidman against Uriah Hall. Chris Weidman, obviously, he won the middleweight title against Anderson Silva with the same situation about the leg break, right? When you watch it in slow-mo...
No, we defended it on this one.
Oh, yeah, okay. But my point is, right, when you watch Chris Weidman after the leg break and watch his face, he doesn't even notice his leg's broken. And then when he stands down, I nearly got fucking sick everywhere. Like, Ross, you told me some stat earlier about, like, Weidman being, like, it's only happened 3 times in the UFC, and he's been part of it twice. Like, when you saw that, what did you think, man?
Yeah, I think it was David Loiseau, Anderson Silva, and then Chris Weidman. Throwback Thursday. Well, it's not Thursday, but throwback Thursday to David Loiseau. He's very old school.
There was a Corey Hill in there as well.
Maybe it was Corey Hill. They look similar.
He's a big, tall, 6'4" featherweight.
Yeah, so like
chicken
maybe
legs.
maybe it's the 4th time. Maybe I have the guy's name wrong. Who was I listening to? I was listening to Luke Thomas. I don't know. Do you know Luke Thomas, Lemo?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, he was saying that if you came up with a movie script and you handed it to a producer in Hollywood, they'd tell you to get lost because they wouldn't believe that story was real. It really was like something out of a movie. And sadly, I think that's Chris Weidman's career over. Yeah. He was 36 going into this fight. He'll be 37 in June. By the time he probably recovers and get back from this, 38. And will he be the same fighter as before? Probably not. I think Anderson Silva lost 7 of his last 8 fights after that leg break. And I think
Weidman has lost 5 of his last 7 already.
Now
6 of it. Weidman had lost 5 of his last 7 before this fight as well. So now this is 6 of his last 8. So it's time to hang them up.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? He had an absolute fantastic career. I felt like it's sort of weird to say he was the middleweight champion of the world, but I feel like he never fulfilled his potential. I felt like he was 1 or 2. I don't know whether you probably have a coaching perspective, but I felt like he was always 1 or 2 tweaks away. If he stuck to more of a wrestling base, he could have actually had much more success in his career. And I thought like his on top grappling and the submission game was very, very strong, and he didn't utilize it enough.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird one. I think he was gifted the title first. Like Anderson Silva just showing off, and he if Anderson Silva had not shown off at that stage, Chris Weidman would have lost that fight. There was no way he was getting anywhere near him. You know, the second fight, I mean, that was a freak accident. So you could argue that he was gifted those 2 fights. The fight against Rockhold, he made one critical error. He was actually on the way to win that fight. He threw a spinning back fist. Back wheel kick.
Yeah,
and he fell over or something, and Luke Rockhold got a top position and rained down elbows on him from the mount position, and he never recovered from that. And I think, so that whole story there, and he's kind of been hit and miss ever since. As I said, 5 of his last 7 were losses, or like he had only 1, 2. So, I think maybe it's a case of a guy that probably shouldn't have won the title when he won it. If he hadn't, he would have gone back to the drawing board, developed with a couple of smaller fights and gotten better. But I think that the fact that he won it then meant that everybody he fought from then on was the best other person in the division, and he wasn't there yet. He was the champion too soon.
Yeah, and who can forget the Romero knockout against him as well? That was like literally running into a bus. But here, look, UFC is back this weekend. UFC is every weekend. It's fucking brilliant. Dominic Reyes is taking on Yuri Prochaska in the light heavyweight division. That's headlining this Saturday. Ross, what are you expecting this weekend? People were saying Dominic Reyes should have beaten. He did beat John Jones. He then lost to Jan Blachowicz for the title. What are you expecting here now?
I just really like Yuri. I think he's an absolute wild man. I think his fight stance is so awkward and unorthodox. And there's just something about him that I cheer for him. It's almost it's shades of almost like Johnny Walker-esque.
Yeah,
You know what I
isn't
mean?
it? Isn't it?
You don't really know what's coming. He throws shots from weird angles. Also, he's a European guy. I think Dominic Reyes, after he had that very close fight with John Jones, I don't really care whether people want to say he wins or lost. I think you can make an equal argument for both. I just think he went into that Jan Blachowicz fight and he almost assumed he would win. And then, you know what I mean? I don't think it was going to be that straightforward. And I don't know whether he's going to get that confidence back that he had going into the John Jones fight. So I just think Yuri's coming off win. He's very, very confident. And Reyes is coming off, you know, the biggest, you know, sort of disappointment of his career in losing the fight to Jones, especially considering he thought he won, and then losing to Jan in such devastating fashion. So I'm going to go for Yuri. Liam?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm a Yuri fan. Even though he's only had, I think, it's only 2 fights in the UFC at this stage. But we've got a fighter here in the gym by the name of Rory Hennebury, and he is the most awkward motherfucker to fight, and he is perfectly matched for Yuri Prochaska. The strikes that this guy throws are just the wrong strikes at the wrong time, but they work. And that's there's no way that you can prepare for somebody like that. And Dominic Reyes, as you rightfully said, is his confidence is low. You know that you know, being beaten by John Jones, I think that probably boosted his confidence that he got so close. But then the knockout to Blachowicz, that takes something from your soul, and you need a bounce back fight. And I think Yuri is just the wrong guy for him. I see Yuri hitting him with a back fist or something like that, or a toe puck, or I think he might even just hammer fist the top of his head or something. There's something weird going to happen with this Yuri Prochaska.
I could picture a flying knee. He's just a firework in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Yuri as well, lads. But like this card obviously isn't amazing. It's coming off a pay-per-view event, but like Cub Swanson's on it. Kuti Laba's on this as well. Like you have to watch him once he gets in there. He walks right up to them. So like it should be good crack. That's this Saturday. PFL is on Thursday this week. It says here actually Rory McDonald's fighting Melinder. Anthony Pettis lost over the weekend as well. That's not great for them at all. And then this Friday, Mikey Conlon's fighting as well. He's fighting in London. And then on Saturday, Katie Taylor's fighting as well. That's sort of like gone over everything. Ross, I didn't know we were going to get this deep to Liam, but it was very good to hear the background and like what's actually going on, the structure in the background, and I'm really looking forward to the future of Irish MMA, and we will have more people that are representing Irish MMA to talk about in the future.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think we were making some assumptions and making some guesses. Limo set the record straight, which is way better. Power is definitely knowledge, and we appreciate the knowledge and wisdom you have bestowed upon us, Limo. Limo, do you have anything you want to add in, bar wishing the Fighting Irish good luck this weekend? Also, let us know about your podcast, where we can find it, and any social handles you have.
Yeah. Sure. Perfect. Well, I'll go backwards there because my brain works in reverse order, right? So find me on Twitter, Liam OG Griffin, also Instagram and Facebook under that handle as well. It's the Gusting. I got that wrong, didn't I? It's the Guts and Glory MMA podcast. We're up on YouTube. We've got obviously a live show, kind of like this, a kind of a live chat, kind of discussion panel. We do that twice a week live, and then we've got 3 or 4 kind of regular segments, top 10 lists. Paul does a matchmaker where he matches up all the fighters who've won and lost from the previous event and what they should do next. And then we've got like Andy Hickey from Clonmel, who's like a master statistician. This dude has, I don't know, has he got like servers in his attic or what, but he comes up with some of the best and interesting facts that I've come across. And he does behind the tape segment for us every week, where it's just stuff that you just didn't know about. Like he always catches me for a loop. So he does that. So Guts and Glory MMA podcast. Shout out to the Irish team has a busy year ahead of it this year. We've got hopefully the squads we're hoping to get going in May. We've had a couple of event like squad sessions planned that had to be cancelled due to lockdowns, but hopefully we get back in May, because we've got the youth championships is in Istanbul in August. We've got the European Championships is in St. Petersburg in Russia. And we've got the World Championships later on in the year, which is in Kazakhstan. And anybody who comes back from Kazakhstan with a medal should have a statue erected in their honor frickin' whatever O'Connell Street in Dublin or Patrick Street in Cork. It's going to be a tough year for the Irish, but we're gonna step up and meet the challenge.
Yeah, because we've all seen how tough Borat is at wrestling.
I was going to crack the swimming dog thing. He has like mankini, but yeah, Ross, I forgot to mention as well. Shout out to everyone who got onto us for getting on the UFC 262 countdown video. That's our second time, and
261 man.
No,
Don't
261.
be ahead of yourself.
Well, I was going to let the cat out of the bag. I think I just did. We're going to be on the next one as well. So that's going to be third time. And then let's see what happens as well for the future.
Nice.
But right, Liam, thanks a million for coming to the show. If you are new to the show, make sure to like, make sure to share, make sure to subscribe. And as always,
stay energized.